Welcome to the Endurance Drive podcast.
Our mission is to share the key principles that structure our approach to endurance training and coaching.
I'm Jim.
And I'm Katie.
It's been a couple weeks since we've sat down at the mics.
I've missed it here. Missed the Pain Cave.
The Pain Cave studio. What have you been up to?
Well, I actually am just getting back from a trip to California. So I'm finishing up grad school there, and that means I have to go out fairly frequently. So I went out, I had a lot of big meetings, and I also got to fit in some fun outside training, which obviously we can't be riding outside in the Upper Valley right now. So it was fun to go somewhere where I could trail run and ride my bike outside.
You did some big stuff out there.
I did. Yeah, it was sort of like work meets camp, I think. I called it my work and wellness retreat. And I was with a good friend who we've coached, gravel cyclist, my friend Ella, and we got a lot of really good stuff in while we were out there. And I think it's interesting because spending all that time doing a bunch of really big endurance activities, I think this was some of my biggest volume since Kona. So I've had a pretty chill off season, and it was nice to get back into some high volume. And I realized that once you kind of go into the well, and it was the first time in a long time I'd gone into the well, you pick up a lot of lessons that are really useful for the podcast. So I came back just like full of energy and ready to share everything that I learned on my trip with our podcast listeners.
And I think that segue into, now it's January, and we've done a lot of, base training in November and December, but January seems to get real, right? So you went out and did big workouts, and I've got other athletes now who are saying, okay, the race season is coming, that things are getting serious. And I think all of that leads us to, there's a lot of coaching and training insights that we're now starting to get this time of year as the work gets more serious.
Yeah. And in that vein, I think we're actually going to start a new segment. So maybe we need a special jingle for every time we introduce a new segment. But a new segment that we're going to be doing is called Coaching and Training Insights. And basically, we're just going to take a little bit of time to share with you things that we've picked up in the last week or so from coaching and training that we think are really, really valuable principles.
So one thing I noticed for myself this week, maybe you've experienced the same thing in California. I started doing a lot of skiing this week. And skiing by nature is just very tempo threshold. It's really hard, folks, to do zone 2 training with Nordic skiing. But I've been so used to doing all these trainer workouts like zone 2 and not really feeling for it. And then the skis I've done recently, I've gone out there and I have to admit, I've kind of crashed a few times. Like, I did not eat enough. So I'm learning that you got to feel these workouts, right?
You really do. And I think once you get into those higher heart rate zones and you are sort of by nature just in the carb burning zone, we've talked about metabolic flexibility and being in the fat burning zone versus the carb burning zone. But sometimes you can't control the fact that you need to be in the carb burning zone, to do these high intensity skis or some really steep high intensity riding. And that's where you can't fake it. You can't hide. Like bonking is coming for you if you don't feel properly. And I certainly learned this while I was in California this week because I did this one big ride. It was about 85 miles and I think almost 9,000 feet of climbing. So that's a super beefy ride. I haven't done anything like that recently. And I think it was a little ballsy to just be like, oh yeah, we're just going to, sit on a plane all day and then roll into this bike ride. But I did this ride, and the riding out in California is very hilly, very steep. And we did this one climb up Jameson Creek Road. It's this small road sort of near the Big Basin redwoods. And I think you're at like 13%, 14% grade for a lot of this hill. It's about a 35-minute climb. And for the first time probably in like 4 months, I was hitting my max heart rate. And then I noticed that I was spiking all the rest of the day. I'd gone into the carb burning zone. I couldn't really recover from it. And we'd started the ride pretty late in the day. So like 11:30 a.m. It felt like 2:30 p.m. with a jet lag. And all this is to say, I was bonking, and I don't bonk very often. And I was sort of like, woo, a little woozy, a little bit all over the road. We had to stop at this little shop in Davenport, California, and just like down a Coke and a muffin and all this stuff. But the point is, don't let yourself get there. If you can avoid it, you don't want to spike so high that you just can't, process all of the lactic acid, and you want to be in that fat burning zone and you really want to fuel. So lesson learned. I'm glad I learned it early in the season, but even us as seasoned athletes, we can still mess up with this type of stuff.
And there's really nothing like an early season bog off on the bike, right?
Yes. Yeah. No better way to check your pride and remind yourself that you are a human endurance athlete.
And I think sort of on the other side of that, that's a good point. But I've been talking to a lot of athletes recently who are just, it is January and it's kind of dark and it's kind of cold, and folks just struggling a little bit with just getting outside or just getting their workouts done, right? Starting off. So I've been talking recently a lot about what I call exercise snacks. And the exercise snack, it really is it's like a 30-minute run or a 30-minute bike. And typically this is like Monday through Friday. And so a lot of folks are super busy during the week and they've got jobs, they got families. So I've been advocating for just do 30 minutes. 30 minutes will get you a long way. It'll get you consistent and you'll maintain some level of fitness. And then, as it acts as a bridge, right, to getting to warmer and sunnier days, right, when your motivation returns. And then you'll have some base level of fitness.
Yeah, I think we definitely think of these exercise snacks as just contributing to the mitochondria factory. And this is jumping ahead a little bit to our listener questions, but I had a question this week from an athlete asking about she works a desk job. She's pretty sedentary during the day, except for her Ironman training workouts. So she was asking, should I be trying to hit 10,000 steps a day? Is there something I should be doing every hour or just in general trying to not work against building that aerobic base? And I think my recommendation for that is the idea of 10,000 steps is a little bit arbitrary, especially if you have a day where you go out for a 6-mile run and you don't do any other activity is going to be different from a day where you're doing a swim and a bike, but just don't get a lot of steps. But I think in general, the idea of getting up, moving around, doing just a little bit of mobility work, anything like that is going to make it such that your workouts are more effective. You won't take as much time to warm up. I recommended maybe EC Fit mobility videos. You can throw that in sort of anytime during the day. But the point is move around a little bit. Don't think about it as a fitness thing, but move around enough that you're not going to be tight and sore and just getting contorted into an uncomfortable position that's going to leave you not very aligned by the time you start your workout.
Yeah, I want to start at that 10,000 step thing because I saw that you see a lot on Twitter and social media. Take 10,000 steps. And at first I thought, this is kind of it's on Twitter. Who knows? But as I started focusing on how many steps I was doing per day, it was sort of motivating me to get out of the chair, go for a walk, right? And do that a couple times a day. And suddenly you're up to, even just 6,000 steps, 8,000 steps. But you really notice it's a big difference in how you feel.
And I would note that our recommendations are going to be a little bit different from a season planning perspective too. This time of year, we were thinking about general fitness. We're thinking about low intensity stuff. If you are in your specific prep phase and you are training 22 hours a week, you should be recovering all the time that you're not training. So there, I'm not saying go out and get your 10,000 steps. But in situations like this, I think, now is early enough that it's okay to be focusing on something like that.
Yeah, that's a great point. Something else I picked up this week is just spending a lot of time talking about goals. Are you doing that with your athletes? A lot of A races?
Yeah, a lot of people are asking where are we going? What goals are realistic? How do we think about them? So goals are always on our mind, especially in the beginning of the season.
So I had sort of 3 thoughts, if you will, about big goals. And so number 1 is they're often why we've chosen endurance sports. And we welcome them here. We want you to dream big. And it's also very common that you can accomplish a lot more than what you think. There's this narrative that we tell ourselves that we're this type of athlete, and that can often be limiting. But with months and years of proper training, we'll rewrite that narrative, and we often will far exceed our expectations. So big goals with proper training, they're life-changing. It's very powerful medicine.
Yeah, I mean, I never, ever would have believed that I would go to the Ironman World Championships multiple times when I could not swim across the pool. As a new triathlete, I literally could not swim 25 yards. I'd never been on a road bike before, and I would have probably laughed at you if you'd suggested that I would even complete a sprint triathlon. So just keep that in mind. Nobody emerges into this world as a really elite triathlete. So don't be afraid to dream big and be realistic. You need to stack bricks consistently to even get there, literal bricks and metaphorical bricks. So, it's not just going to happen overnight, but dream big and work towards it. And we definitely believe you can do this.
Sort of my second thought on this is that, when you proclaim these big goals, you strongly signal, to yourself, to your family, your friends, and your coach that you're all in, right? Again, but if you choose this path as coaches, we will hold you accountable because we're being held accountable by you, right? So if you skip key workouts or regularly go off the plan or take a week off to do during this specific prep to do something else, our job is to step in and point out that there can be these inconsistencies between your pronouncements and your actions. So we as coaches, we want to ensure that your big goals are backed up by consistent, mindful, and patient action. And we want to sort of separate out that fantasy and ground our training and thinking in reality.
And I'll definitely say that when you proclaim these big goals, it is kind of scary. Sometimes it makes it feel like the stakes are a lot higher if you don't achieve them. So if you say I am going to qualify for Kona at this race, if you don't qualify for Kona because your bike exploded or you messed up your nutrition or just had a really bad day, that sometimes stings a little bit more. But in my experience, even if your goals don't materialize, your crew will still support you, especially when you have put that work in. So proclaiming it doesn't mean it's necessarily going to happen, but don't be afraid to do that because we still think it's a really important accountability mechanism. And if it doesn't work out, you'll learn a lot when it comes to failure. And
you sure will. So my third point is just very short, is that I read this the other day, is that patience always wins in an impatient world.
Yeah, that's a mic drop point, I would say. And I think the big thing about endurance training is that there is no one key workout. I mean, we talk about race sims being important and this and that, but at the end of the day, it is the consistent approach, being gentle, being precise, being honest. This all fits within sort of our person first and athlete second coaching philosophy, but it's going to be a patient game.
Yeah, I really like that. Coaching is about this gentle, precise, and honest. And it's gentle because, we are this right person first, athlete second coaching philosophy. And precise because training is applying the right workouts at the right time to get a specific result. And honest because we're partners in helping you live up to what you said are your goals. And so, are you executing on the commitments you made to yourself, your family, your coach? So we're here to help you answer those questions and guide you through that question and process.
I love that. I have one more big insight related to goals.
Go.
And I would say that you want to be thinking about these process goals rather than these outcome goals all the way. So an example of an outcome goal is I'm going to qualify for Kona, or I'm going to win my age group, or, I'm going to finish under 12 hours, whatever that goal is. But process goals are a little bit about kind of what it takes to get there. And what I like about process goals is that you have a lot more control over them. So you cannot control who else shows up there on race day. You cannot control the weather. You cannot control all these different variables. But process goals, you can control whether you are showing up to the pool your 2 times a week that we've scheduled for. And you can control whether you're going to do a pre-run warm-up and activation routine. You can control whether you're going to really, really focus on nailing that nutrition, hydration. And it's nice because it's still just as gratifying, I think, to reach these process goals. And in my experience, if you chip away at process goals, often you get outcome goals or you get these really great outcomes as a result. But don't put all of your eggs in the outcome goals basket because, again, there are so many things that are outside of your control. And I think it's grounding to say, okay, I have a lot of goals and I know whether I can execute them or not.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think one of the characteristics we see of our successful athletes is they're really good at defining what is controllable and what's uncontrollable and really separating those two things out.
Mm-hmm. That's something that's taken me years to do, but I think it's made my training and quality of life a lot better than when I was only outcome driven. So speaking on the process and speaking about traits that are useful in endurance athletes, I think we're ready to jump into our topic for today's episode. And that topic is what we term as the endurance athlete's most valuable trait. And we're going to talk about durability. So Jim, give us a preview of what we're covering.
Okay, so as coaches, we train athletes for many, many traits. So there's speed, there's power, there's aerobic and metabolic efficiency, there's lactate tolerance, VO2 max, dedication grit, all this stuff, right? But the one that we value probably the most in our athletes is durability.
Yep. And I think durability sort of underlies how we've approached some of our biggest and most exciting adventures. So in our Adventures as Training episode, we talked about, for example, the New England Triple Crown. We'll probably preview some other adventures that we've done in this episode. We did the 100-mile wilderness route in Maine over 3 days once. We've done the Lamb Ride, a really long and beefy ride in Vermont. We've done the hut-to-hut traverse in the White Mountains. We'll explain what all of these are probably later on, but all of these adventures have only been possible because we would say we're pretty durable athletes. So, Jim, what is durability?
Yeah,
what does it mean to be durable?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. Well, for me, durability means you can really tackle these big days and adverse conditions and not only survive, but thrive there, and you bounce back even stronger afterwards. So, and I also want to say that durability is in context, right? Because so we've talked about these big days in the mountains or an Ironman, but our big day is different than somebody else's big day. So somebody's durability or big day could be really couched to 5Ks. We're here for all of it, right? So some people are starting at a very basic level and other folks are doing more high adventures, right? It's all valid for us.
100%. And I think we can break down durability into sort of its physical and more mental components. So physically, when we want to operationalize it, if you're durable, you don't often get cold while you're training. You don't get overuse injuries. You don't get sick. You don't end up bonking a lot. And you sort of become known among your friends as someone that they can really just count on to stay clear-headed and strong when that adventure or that race simulation or whatever it is gets hard or goes sideways. You're just going to keep powering through. And I think it's really inspiring to be around those people. That's another way to make yourself more durable, is to spend time with durable people and say, what are they doing? And how do I do that as well?
Mm-hmm. And I think mentally, you're confident and you're relaxed before and during these big days. And, You know how to push through when you're deep in the pain cave. You have this ability to keep cool and logical when the adventure inevitably kind of goes sideways when you step in and help lead others to the finish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just sort of know how to put your head down and get it done, and there's not a lot of debate or conversation about it. Now, an important point that we want to make that I think gets tossed around a lot in the endurance world is this obsession with like leanness and body comp and all these different things. We want to make the very clear point that optimizing for things like leanness is not optimizing for durability. And honestly, optimizing for leanness is something we see as a shortcut to disaster, to relative energy deficient in sport, to just bonking all the time. So let's put the sort of body composition conversation to the side here and focus on that durability maximization, regardless of body comp, because at the end of the day, that is going to be a more direct path to longevity and success as an athlete.
So the question everybody asks then is, how do I build up this durability? Katie, how do we do that?
There's a lot of things you can do. So we're going to go through a few action items. The first one goes back to what we've been talking about with consistency. So you need to start with stacking a lot of small workouts month after month, year after year, and just build that huge aerobic base. So you're not going to wake up with durability overnight if you don't currently have it, but with consistency, you can absolutely get there.
And getting back to that point before, again, it's training for any distance is the best starting point for your durability quest.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just doing a training program. So especially if you're already one of our athletes, congratulations, you are well on your way to durability. We'd say specifically Ironman training is a really good way to build durability because the volume is just so high.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a new athlete who's doing Ironman this year and was asking me like, I'm worried that Ironman training is going to make me slow for my marathon. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, but it's definitely not going to make you, always faster for your 5K or your marathon. But what you will see is you build this tremendous aerobic and metabolic efficiency with Ironman training. Ironman training tends to be a little bit slow. So you are building this massive base. And I've seen athletes who have done summer Ironmans. And then when we've dumped the biking and the swimming, their run paces go so much faster because they don't have as much chronic fatigue in them and they're just focusing on one sport. So it is a great way to build durability and leverage that back into speed for maybe like a fall race.
Exactly. And if you're really durable going into that fall race prep, you're not going to be as prone to these overuse injuries that are so common in single sport athletes and runners because you have that bulletproof base. I think we could talk a little bit about durability in the context of training. So in a race context, we've talked about these big days or these race simulation weekends. That's an incredible way to build durability because you need your body to respond, not for even just like a one-day event. Usually this is a multi-day event, or even if it's one day, you're going to have maybe a recovery day and then jump right back into that heavy training. So if you're just out there, high volume, doing things that are pushing your body, but needing to fuel it well, needing to take care of it during that whole time, you're going to be building some big durability.
And also some of those big days outside, they can take many other forms like trail running or a mega long hike or a super long bike or even something like hunting, right? I've done those a bunch where you go out and at sunrise. And I actually had one this year where I went at sunrise and hunted all morning and then came home for maybe 30 minutes and then went out and biked all afternoon. And that just became a very good durability training session and a durability test, if you will, because I was outside from sun up to sun down that day. And I was tired, but I survived.
Yeah. And baseline, your body is probably working harder in that context, right? To keep itself warm, you still need to be fueling well. Even though hunting, I don't know that much about hunting. That is not one of my side hustles, but,
really?
but I imagine your heart rate's not all that high, right? So it's even harder sometimes when you're at that elevated, not really at rest, but you need to be taking care of yourself because it's harder to stay warm.
Yeah. And also bringing that proper gear as well too, right? So layering up, knowing what the context is, obviously hunting was different than say biking that day. But you really want to set yourself up for best success by bringing the best gear you can.
Yeah, we'd say that we don't really believe in handicapping yourself to build durability. Don't go out there and be like, I'm going to wear shorts and it's 12 degrees and I'll be more durable. That's sort of just a waste of the gear is available for you. So build some durability outside of that.
And we've talked a little about this again, but we always go back to the fueling part. But fuel your activity really well. We never want you to be on the edge of low energy availability.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a great way to be more durable is if you're fueling yourself super well. Another thing to think about is strength training. So you can either do structured strength training in the gym. We absolutely recommend that. And sort of organic strength training. So hill climbing, weighted carries, even doing something like paddles and buoy in the pool is sort of a strength-oriented workout. And the stronger that you are, literally just in terms of building some muscle mass, the more durable you're going to be for a lot of these big days.
And like we talked about before, to help build durability is just incorporate lots of daily movement. So again, those exercise snacks or the or the 10,000 steps, or stacking woods, or even just going up and down your stairs in your house or in your office building.
Mm-hmm. And keep in mind that humans are supposed to do that. We're sort of supposed to be moving all day, and humans in general are supposed to be pretty durable. And I think it's modern society that has made us less durable. So just connect back to those primal roots, which is to be durable and moving a lot. And I think you'll see the gains in training quite a bit.
And there's also the whole mental side of things, which is we want to do things that seem just a little bit intimidating, just push our boundaries a little bit and practice pushing through when the going gets tough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not that often, I think, in daily life that we put ourselves in those situations. I think often we like to be comfortable. It makes sense. But just pushing the edge of what's comfortable, getting outside of that comfort zone, either in a physical or mental or both context, I think is really, really valuable. That could start with small challenges, for example. Add one more big hill at the end of a long run or bike, or go for a Strava segment that you don't know if you're going to get. You might not be fast enough. It might not work out, but at least try it. I think that's really helpful on the mental side. Add another 500 yards to your swim. If you're not an early morning person, once a week, try to get up early and tackle a workout. These are all things that might be a little bit scary and outside of what's the most comfortable, but when you push through it, you get this sort of reinforcement that says, hey, I actually can do this, and it'll translate to a lot of your other training.
I always say to a lot of my athletes, like, we're these indoor cats.
Yes.
I feel like a lot of this training is we're fighting against that comfort and being indoors and being in front of our computers all day long. So how do we push back on that a little bit?
Mm-hmm. And keep in mind, too, we're especially indoor cats at this time of year. So, get outside. Obviously, sometimes it's more convenient or easier to hop on the treadmill. But we say, if the roads are clear and it's just cold, bundle up, get outside, and you'll work on that durability a little bit.
So the opposite side of that. So what happens if you're not durable?
Oof. Yeah. If you're not durable, your season may not be very long, because inevitably you're going to get, at the very best, you're just not really going to get faster or stronger. But at the very worst, you're going to end up injured, overuse injuries. You're probably going to end up getting sick a lot. Everybody around us has COVID right now. You're going to be more likely to pick up stuff like that. And you're probably just going to get burnt out by all of the training because you're really, really worn out and you're not absorbing those gains just as well. I think we've also seen kind of anecdotally, especially when you're doing these kind of cold weather adventures, you're going to be probably sort of cold all the time. Your body's not going to be able to take the elements as well. I remember my first time we went up into the White Mountains. It was December of 2017, and Jim took a group of us up Mount Madison. And I was not a very durable athlete at that time. I also did not have a lot of durability experience. And we ended up turning around. We made it to the Madison Hut, but not the summit, because my hands were so cold. And, I had layers. But now we go up. We were doing the New England Triple Crown, and it was 30 below on top of Katahdin. And it was just yep, head down, got my goggles on, I'll be fine. So it's awesome to look back on that and see wow, today I'd have no problem getting up there. It wasn't a fitness thing, but it was a durability thing. And you don't want to be in that situation.
Yeah, durability it can be this long journey, but it's a really rewarding journey.
I think also if you're not durable, you will inevitably get injured a lot. You won't be able to sustain those big days. And so even if you have one or two good races, we often see this pattern where athletes that aren't that durable, maybe they've optimized, for example, for leanness or something. They might have one or two incredible races and they get in their head that okay, this is where I can race. This is where I'm going to be the most successful. But then the wheels come off, and it can be a multi-year journey to kind of building back the durability to be able to sustain really good stuff. And in our experience, we've seen it so many times. We've seen people excel, in that very precarious area, then fall off the wagon. And we've had athletes who've just been durable the whole time, and they have the longest careers and the best success, and they just stay in sport so much longer. So if your goal is to be a lifelong athlete, then you need to prioritize durability. And I don't think anyone's goal is I want one great race and then never to do my sport again because my body broke. So just think about playing that long game.
I think it's a good point you brought up, coming back after having, significant injuries or just playing on the edge all the time. And we have seen this in so many athletes where it's not just it takes weeks or months to recover, but it takes years to recover from some of these things. So if you just end up going really deep or overtraining or just not doing fueling properly, for example, it can take a very, very, very long time. So it's not something that we take lightly.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And you should start tomorrow. Honestly, if you're I don't really know if I'm durable or not, it's never too late or too early. Literally just start trying to be durable tomorrow with all these tips, and it'll be a process. But if you're moving along it, you're definitely on the right track.
So it'd be to the last point, which is how do we know, like what metrics do we use? Like, how do you know if you're durable?
Yeah. So we have some more objective indicators here and some more subjective indicators. But I think the biggest one is you can just roll into big adventures on relatively little preparedness and trust your body to handle the load if you're durable. So as I said before, it was kind of ballsy for me to roll into California. I had a lot of flight delays. So I was sitting on a plane for 13 hours the day before this huge ride, rolled into California and was like, yeah, I'm going to bike 85 miles. And like, yes, I bonked a little bit. Yes, it was probably not my most graceful 85-mile ride with 9,000 feet of climbing, but I trusted that my body could do it because I have this baseline level of durability. And I know that a previous version of me that wasn't as durable probably would have needed to find an Uber somewhere in Davenport, California to come get me. And here I was like, yeah, I'm a little bit in the well, but going to be completely fine because I know that I'm super durable.
One of the cool things now, we all wear these Garmins and Oura rings and all kinds of stuff. So we get these hard metrics that we can tell for being durable. So one thing is, are we sleeping well, right? Is your heart rate up? Is your resting heart rate down, right? So you get sick often. But these are things that we can do that they're just facts, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right? And exactly. All these metrics, we've talked a lot about good data and bad data, but I think Garmin and Oura Ring and Whoop and all these different things do give you metrics that can tell you if you're durable or not. And specifically, are you recovering from your workout? So is your body battery going back up to 100 every night because you're sleeping well? And like we said, yeah, HRV should be up, resting heart rate should be down. You're not getting sick that often or easily, especially in female athletes, like having a regular menstrual cycle. That's also another good sign that you're durable and absorbing the training well. But pay attention to those indicators because they really do matter.
And if you are durable, I think you go into these big days and these races just feeling, calm and confident. We've all seen that. And maybe people at, pre-race look around and say, why does that person look so calm and confident? What do they know that I don't know, right?
And they're just durable.
They're just very durable, right? They've been there before, right? They have a really good mindset. They really have their pre-race nerves sort of under control. They're not crippling.
And it's a nice feedback mechanism because, as we said, it's consistent, good training that leads to durability. So if you've done that training, you should probably be pretty confident on race day. If you're nervous on race day, that might be because you didn't do your training or because you're not durable. So I think those things correlate pretty highly.
Right. As a coach, we talk a lot about our job really in the end is to get you race ready.
Yes.
And I guess a big part of that is just being durable.
Exactly. And then the last thing, how do you know if you're durable? If you are someone who doesn't bonk very often and can sustain hard efforts late in the day as well as early in the day, that's a good sign of durability. If, on the other hand, you feel like you're bonking on every single workout, first of all, that's a good sign that you're probably not fueling well. Second, it's a good sign that you're not really tapping into that metabolic flexibility. So you're using up all of that high intensity sort of carb burning zone energy. So if you can get to the point where you're not bonking a lot, that is a good sign for your durability metrics. And we had a great episode last week on fueling for endurance athletes. So refer to that if you're looking for advice. Get a dietitian on board if you need it. But yeah, we don't have a lot of bonking or just completely crashing, like Jim said, if you're durable.
Except for you last week, bonking.
I know, yeah. Well, I think it's just the point, like we all make mistakes and do things poorly. And I learned a lot going into the season. So can't mess around in the next couple of months.
Absolutely. So you want to sum this up for us?
Yes. Okay. So here's a mic drop to sum up durability. We would say that if your goal is longevity and joy in sport and the ability to do literally whatever you want in the outdoors, your focus has to be durability. If you can only optimize for one trait, we would pick durability over anything else. And that's, I think, how we've had a lot of success in sport.
So we've mentioned a lot of adventures that we've done and probably are good examples of durability. What's your favorite adventure that we've done that would sort of illustrate all these points?
Well, I'm glad that you asked this question because I was hoping we would have another window in the podcast where we could talk about another favorite adventure. So I'm going to talk about what we called the 100-Mile Wilderness Express. And we foreshadowed this earlier in the episode. But in September of 2022, we got the idea that we wanted to cover Maine's 100-mile wilderness over a period of 3 days. And for those that don't know, not a lot of people know about the 100-mile wilderness, but it's actually the last 100 miles of the Appalachian Trail in Maine. And the reason it's so special is because most of the Appalachian Trail, kind of from Georgia all the way up to Maine, you're passing through towns pretty much every day. It's not all that remote. You can often hear the highway or you're doing road crossings, and it's not that hard to get to. But the last 100 miles of the Appalachian Trail in Maine is actually really remote, and it's only accessible via these deep logging roads into the forest. And so there's this sign at the beginning of the trail that says, like, there are no supplies. You need to have every single thing that you need to survive for the next 7 to 10 days on average. That's how long it takes people to hike through this until you reach the very end, which is right before Mount Katahdin in Maine that we've talked about. And so I had backpacked this route once before with a group of friends. And then I had also done a section of it with a friend who was through hiking. And I think I got this idea like, well, what if we cut this down? What if we tried to do it as fast as we could? And we started running the numbers and realized like, okay, if we do 3 mega trail days, we can cover Maine's 100-mile wilderness in 3 days. And we called it the Maine 100-mile Wilderness Express. And Jim, who's usually pretty good if I'm just like, hey, can we do this adventure? Said yes immediately. And we kind of started getting our things together to make this adventure happen. And it's logistically pretty challenging because we didn't want to be backpacking. We wanted to be able to take day packs, but we also knew that we were going to need to sleep. We were not going to cover 100 miles in one day. I'm sure there are many incredible, durable ultra athletes out there who have done that, can do that. But we were focusing on something that was sort of within the bounds of our moderate trail preparation. We had not been doing trail running training. I had done an Ironman. We'd both done an Ironman earlier that year. But yeah, it was just going to roll in and be like, let's see how our bodies can handle this durable thing. So we dropped some bags at these 2 sort of logging road points at, I believe, 30 miles in and 60 miles in that we're going to have overnight supplies. And we planned we were going to cover 30 miles the first day, 30 miles the second day, and 40 miles the third day on Maine's 100-mile wilderness. And so we started out, and it was definitely a huge test of durability because that first 30-mile day was really, really hard. I don't know. How'd you feel about the first day of the 100-mile wilderness?
Well, it's super hot, right? For that time of year.
Yeah, it was September, and it was still like probably 80 degrees out.
And the first few miles were quite moderate. And I thought, and you kept saying to me, oh, there's so much good running to be done in the 100-mile wilderness. I thought, this is great. And I think the first like 10 miles, it was pretty moderate and gentle and kind of rocky and going through some blueberry bushes. And I'm like, yeah, this is really nice. This is going to go fast. I was thinking like, this is not going to be easy, but we're going to totally nail this.
Yep.
But little did I know.
Little did I know that it got a lot harder. So there is basically every single type of terrain that you could imagine is in Maine's 100-mile wilderness. There's some really deep, like shoes off stream crossings where the water's up to your waist, you're getting soaking wet. Then you're in really dry areas where there's not a lot of water and you're doing these rocky climbs. Then you're doing mud, you're doing roots, you're doing rocks, you're doing pretty much everything. And what I found is just really hard to get into a rhythm because the terrain is changing all of the time, you know, going from a bog to like hands on knees kind of climbing and all of that. And as a result, it's working every single muscle and bone in your body really, really hard. And we made it to the end of that first day and we were like, wow, we've got 60 miles to go. And this was really, really hard.
Yeah, mentally, it was just, like you say, it was super challenging. You just couldn't get into something consistent, right? You get to 1 mile and there's a logging road and you're like, this is great, let's go jog along. And all of a sudden you hit a stream that's up to your waist and you're like, okay, let's take our shoes off. And then you cross this stream with a rope. And then the next 3 miles are just like mud and rocks and roots. You're like, this is horrible.
Exactly. And, you know, we're kind of trying to fuel ourselves the entire day here. We don't have the luxury of knowing we're rolling into like a pizza and a burger. So it really means you need to be staying on top of that fueling from the first day. You cannot wait until you're hungry. You got to be on that race day, 30-minute intervals. And by hour 7 of the first day, it's like, do I really want to eat another Nature's Bakery fig bar? Like, love them so much, but you start to kind of get sick of what you're used to and you've got to just huck it down and be ready for the next day. So we made it to this first river crossing. We sleep outside, which of course is not great for getting your body battery back to 100 if you're sleeping outside in a tent. Pack up our stuff, leave it there, embark on the second day, which I think was maybe even more challenging than the first day with a lot of elevation, a lot of mud, a lot of roots, a lot of rocks. Make it to the end of that second day. I think we had heat rash going on by then.
Yeah, terrible. Yeah, terrible. Because it was like 90 degrees and it was probably 95% humidity. It was just relentlessly. We were just so wet. Our packs were wet. Everything was just soaked.
Yep. And, you know, that last day, we started to get a little bit nervous about the ability to finish before dark on the third day. So I believe we started at like 4 a.m. or something because we knew we had to go about 40 miles. And, you know, your foot was a little bit messed up, but you just put your head down. We both put our heads down. And I would say there was not a lot of conversation happening in those last 2 days. But to speak to this point about durability, I had 100% trust that both of us were going to make it through there because we've just done so much of this stuff together. And it was like, yeah, this sucks. It hurts. My entire body is just like screaming at me, but I know that it can do it. And when we hit that last 10K, you know, maybe 6 miles getting out of the 100-mile wilderness, it was probably the hardest terrain of the entire day. And yet I had this sense of there is no question in my mind that we are going to make it through here. And that was the reflection of so many years of just durability prep and trust in each other to be able to just knock that off.
Yeah, I think I learned a valuable lesson on the day 3. So about mile 7 of that day, I started off the day and this is going to be a really big day. So I tied my shoes pretty tight for, I don't know what reason why, but let me tie them down. We're going to do a big day. So about mile 7, I thought, gosh, my right foot kind of hurts. And I really didn't want to stop. It was just silly. It's just, you just should stop and readjust. But I was like, let's just keep going. Let's just keep going. So mile 13, I stopped and readjusted. But then at that point, I realized I think I may have broken my foot.
And we've been talking about how you don't get injured very often if you're durable. That being said, when you're on like mile, I guess it was probably about 70 in a 48-hour plus period, it's a little bit hard to sometimes avoid little things cropping up, especially if you mess up your shoes or whatever. But you were durable mentally at that point, right?
Right. So I decided at that point, like I say, okay, I think something's really broke. I'm basically limping at this point, right? And I'm 13 miles in. We have another, 27 miles to go. So right at that point, it became, this is now a mental test. Right?
Yeah.
Physically, you will have to limp 27 miles, but just put one foot in front of the other, right? And that's what we did all day long. And it was really tough terrain. But like you said, we were durable. We've been in these situations before where we've been tested. And this was obviously a really big test. And I always say these big days, you eventually get worn down physically and it really turns into this mental challenge. So at that point, okay, this is my challenge. Here it is, right? 27 miles of broken foot. Let's go. And that's what we did.
Yeah. And I think you can have the exact same mindset in an Ironman or even in a marathon. At any race that it is, there will be a point where you're like, uh-oh, physically, I don't know if I can do this anymore, even if I have the most durable body in the world. And you've got to then tap into that mental durability. And knowing that they go hand in hand, physical durability will get you a lot of the way there. But mental durability is going to be that edge. I think we learned so much about both of those things. And to end the story, we did finish the 100-mile wilderness together. We actually have some videos on our Instagram where we covered the whole thing if you want to go back through the archives and see our vlog way before our podcasting days, actually, from deep in the 100-mile wilderness. But I look back on that adventure as, I think, one of my favorites, just because it pushed the limits of both our physical and mental durability. We had complete trust in each other that we were going to get through that. And I think, yeah, that was just the reflection of years and years of prep. That's all that it is. And I think the mantra that the fastest way is through and the faith in yourself that you can do it. I think both of those things still did shine through, even though it was really hard. So I'm grateful for that. I wonder if we'll go back and do it again someday. I think you said no. When we exited the wilderness, you were like, nope, never again. Not that one.
There were some great lakes there. We'd go back. I would go back and visit some of the lakes. But
as a day hike. Yeah. Maybe we should quit endurance altogether and just switch to endurance canoeing.
I like it. I love it.
Yeah, you won't break your foot.
Right.
So awesome. Well, that's durability. We encourage you to go out and find durable adventures. We love adventures and we're always looking for more ideas. So use these principles and hopefully you can have a really awesome day and not break your foot too. Okay. All right. Ready to segue. We're going to jump into listener questions. So one of our favorite segments. And again, we have a lot of questions about swimming. So Jim, you want to take the first question?
Sure. Well, it's January now, so people are starting getting back in the pool. So yeah, lots of swimming questions. So the first question we got this week, and actually I've got from multiple athletes this week, is should I do bilateral breathing? When I say bilateral breathing, so most people have a favored side. So for example, I like to breathe on my right side every 2 strokes. But should I breathe right and then go 3 strokes and go left and go 3 strokes and go right? So the short answer is no.
I'm surprised to hear you say that, actually. So I saw in our notes that you're suggesting that you swim every 2 strokes. My hot take is that I actually prefer bilateral breathing. So I would say, like, if you're doing both sides and it's really comfortable, like it is for me, don't switch it up right now. But I think this question is geared more towards the newer swimmer that's trying to figure it out. And I would agree with you that if you're more comfortable breathing on one side, in an open water setting, you can absolutely breathe just on that side, take a breath every 2 strokes, and you'll get a lot of oxygen.
Yeah, and I will say that you need to know, for example, like I will do 99% of my swimming on the right side, but I do know how to breathe on my left side. So you should, at some point during the season, focus on breathing off to the other side, because you will still end up in a situation in a race where the waves are coming in. So if the waves are coming from my right side, I have to switch over to my left, and I can switch over to my left. But the reason I advocate every 2 strokes is that you just get the most oxygen when you're doing that. And it also just works the best when you're incorporating open water sighting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's good advice. So a little bit case by case, but yeah, don't end up in a situation where you show up at like the Buzzards Bay Triathlon is one that we've done a lot of times that has insane washing machine level of waves. And if you only know how to breathe on the side that the waves, you're just going to drink the whole ocean. And that's going to be a pretty rough race on the tummy if you do that.
Yeah, our second question is, I've had this probably now 5 times in the last couple of weeks. It's like, why do I get so tired swimming?
Yeah. Well, I think one thing to point out here is that most of the triathlon training that we do is from the hip down. So running, biking, a lot of the lifting that you're doing is probably lower body. And upper body fitness as a triathlete is actually really hard to get unless you are doing a lot of swimming. So think about you're working a whole other system. And that's why even if you're swimming for 30 minutes or something, you're probably going to feel it. We will say that the best way to make that a little bit better is just to get in the pool more. So as you build the upper body fitness, it's not going to tire you out as much. And you can work more on building speed and building technique. But this time of year, early season, we're just working on that baseline level of fitness in the pool. So just keep at it. And hopefully, you won't be as tired and get yourself another coffee.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Keep swimming. That we have a technical focus this time of year. So swimming, really good technical 50s, right? With as plenty of rest as possible. And like you say, swim fitness will arrive. It just follows along behind. Yes. But we all think of ourselves as very fit individuals and then jump into the pool and we're very humbled very quickly.
Yes, we do. I mean, I certainly have been in the pool maybe 3 times this whole month. I've been trying to get the once a week, but I need to recommit to swimming. Another question on swimming is, are the swim yards that are listed in our workouts, are they exact yards? If it says 2,850 yards, is there something magic about doing 2,850 yards?
Oh, yeah. The short answer is no. I'm really bad at math.
Yes.
But no, with any of these swim workouts, and not just our workouts, but any swim workout that you may find. So, consider them a guide, right? Everyone, we advocate for everybody having their own warm-up routine. That's usually like 10 to 15 minutes long. So my warm-up routine is different than, say, your warm-up routine, because there's things that I do during my warm-up that sort of get me activated. And so everybody should find their way in terms of what activates you the best during your warm-up. So, and it doesn't matter, that's between 500 yards and 1,000 yards. So right there's a big discrepancy in terms of the yards listed. But then, so get warmed up and then just, focus on the main set, doing it as best as possible. So don't fret about the yards or the paces this time of year, right? And so the win, we always say, just get to the pool, get in the water, do a warm-up, focus on the main set, get out. Done.
Agreed. Last question about the pool is, should you be wearing your heart rate strap in the pool? So we've talked a lot about heart rate and getting a chest strap rather than wrist heart rate, but does heart rate even matter in the pool?
Yeah, well, I would say no. Don't be that triathlete that wears their heart rate monitor too. I mean, heart rate's different because you're sort of horizontal, but just in general for us at the endurance side, we typically don't look at the heart rate data this time of year because, again, we're really focused on technical 50s and doing 100s and doing the best strokes that you possibly can this time of year. And everything else will just follow along behind that.
And I think the general heart rate straps, like the Polar and then the Garmin HRM Run, I don't think that they're geared towards pool swimming. Like the chlorine's not that great for them. So if your heart rate strap is breaking because you're wearing it in the pool, that's going to be an expensive thing to just keep replacing over and over again. So we would say feel free to ignore it. And we're going to be looking at a lot of different stats, techniques, stuff like that for pool workouts.
So keep sending in those questions.
Yeah,
swim or not.
Questions.
Yeah.
Swim or otherwise.
Right.
We can also answer questions about other topics beyond swimming, but it's actually good to get all these swimming questions because I'm like, wow, I should really go to the pool and do this. So yes, my goal is to get in the pool a little bit more. All right, we're about done. So we're going to finish with our very favorite segment, the gear pick of the week. Jim, what is your gear pick of the week?
I just can't believe I've gone this far, the gear picks of the week, without mentioning Vermont's own Darn Tough socks.
Vermont.
I'm obsessed with their running ones, their hiking ones, their hunting ones, all of them. So my pick this week is a Darn Tough men's fast pack micro crew lightweight hiking sock. And again, we'll have the link on the list.
Yes, I love Darn Tough as well. I have a favorite ultralight running sock from them that I can probably link as well. But they are darn tough. They last pretty much forever. And I'm pretty sure I was wearing those for most of the 100-mile Wilderness Express trip. So if they can survive that, I think they can probably survive anything.
And I think they have a lifetime warranty. So if you rip them or they can send it right back.
That's Vermont. I'm actually going to recommend a Vermont product as well. So I'm going to recommend the Skeeta whole brand. They have headbands, they have hats, they have buffs. It's all sort of winter stuff, but they're really, really fun patterns. They have men's and women's, and I feel like they add a nice pop of color to your ensemble. So if you look cute, you will be faster and more durable and all these great things, in my opinion. So definitely check out the Skeeta website. They were founded in Vermont, and their business has really taken off. So it's just been so cool to see a little Vermont business really take over the world in terms of fashion outside for endurance sports.
Yeah, the question is, can you be Nordic skiing if you don't wear a skeeta?
No, you can't. They don't let you in.
Yeah, right. They don't give you. They won't sell you a trail pass.
The co-op grocery store in Hanover, New Hampshire, you're not actually allowed in if you're not wearing skeeta.
Exactly. So. Yeah. So get a skeeta.
They scan you. They scan the skeeta barcode as you walk in. All right, peeps. I think that's it for our durability episode. We will be back next week with a guest episode again. So very excited for that. But in the meantime, please give us ratings, give us reviews. It really helps out the growth of our podcast. And thank you so much for listening.
Thanks, peeps.